see them. We'll discuss a few things about it and then we will proceed. So instead of giving any kind of overview about cultural studies, what kind of discipline it is, how do we define it as a discipline, where do we posit cultural studies vis-a-vis other studies that we see now in English studies, English department in the discipline as such. So we are not getting into these larger frameworks at the moment. We will see if we can get to those things towards the end of the lecture. So instead of getting into any kind of theories about cultural studies, let's try to look at the conceptual understanding of the word culture, how culture is understood, how culture is seen, how culture is affected, how culture affects us. Right? So, very basics about the word culture and how do we see the transition from culture to cultural. Right? So, at the very outset, I would tell you that culture is a different thing and cultural is another thing. Do not confuse these two things. We are not studying culture, we are doing cultural studies. And I hope that by the end of this lecture, you will have some basic understanding of this shift and the difference both. So let's get started and we move to the next slide. Fayaz, on the next slide, I have a link there. If you can click on that link and show that video to the students, it would be really helpful. Faiz, I think I can share this thing. Should I play it from here? Are we able to listen to the audio of this video?
Please share it.
Okay, you can start it from there.
Yeah, that Andrea Agassi,
Okay,
I showed it. Yeah.
okay, you showed that?
Yeah, yeah, I showed that.
Okay, so yeah.
These are the images of a rebel Canon's revolutionary new autofocus EOS Rebel. So easy to use, you can stop taking snapshots and start taking photographs. EOS Rebel. Canon. So
Okay. So,
Yeah.
can we have just quick observations about this particular ad? What did you see here? What is it all about?
Yes, can anyone tell them?
This is
Camera. It
about
was.
camera. It's about camera. And like, what is the tagline being used in this ad? See, it's very simple. If you see it again very minutely, towards the end of the ad, the actor says, the image is everything. Did you notice this thing? The image is everything. That's what he says towards the end. Okay, are you all with me so far? Okay, Fayaz, can I move ahead? I can't hear anything.
Yes, ma'am, go
Okay,
ahead.
okay, thank you. So, this ad that image is everything. Okay, then this echo problem is there, right? I think you'll have to sit here only. Don't go anywhere.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Please go proceed. No issues.
Okay. So, what are we trying to understand? Why this ad is saying that image is everything? See, this is a particular moment in the history of thoughts and ideas in 20th century where technology is trying to make us understand certain things. Through by using camera, what are you doing? You're just clicking an image. But do you get the implied message in this ad that all that is important in these times, in modern times, right, is to be able to create an image. And the actor is creating an image, and so is he inspiring others that if you use camera, you will be able to create an image. And that image is more important, more significant. Why? Because see, there is a way to articulate the idea of self or subject position. So this is a moment in 20th century, in history of 20th century, which is letting the people understand that now see what I'm trying to say is it's already an era of capitalism, maybe late capitalism, right? We are already into modern times, and modern times invites us to assume a kind of subject position. So this subject position is very well defined in this ad, which says that image is everything. Now, if I put it in other words, this is also indirectly trying to tell us that we all are supposed to create our images, and we do it. Invariably, we do this, and we constantly and very successfully do this thing. Rather, I would say we aspire to do this thing. Now, how do we aspire to do this thing? What is a process which really initiates into creating our own images? Is where the cultural studies has its own role to play. Okay, so far so clear? Just give me thumbs up or maybe just raise your hand so that I get okay. So far things are clear. Okay, great. Thank you.
You have to be interactive.
Yeah, because I want to talk to you, right? Okay, so this ad is fine. Now we move to the next slide where we have a few more ads to be seen. Let me share my screen with you so that you can see it.
मेरी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी में बच्चों के लिए क्या सही है क्या गलत है वो चुनो। मैं कोलगेट के अलावा कोई और चीज प्रोडक्ट चुनूंगी नहीं। मेरी बेटी को बेस्ट ही दूंगी हेल्थ के हिसाब से, तो बस कोलगेट। मार्केट में काफी सारे चॉइसेस है, बट माय चॉइस इज कोलगेट।
इनकी तरह करोड़ों माएं भरोसा करती हैं कोलगेट पर। इसका कैल्शियम प्रोटेक्शन दांतों को रखे मजबूत और कैविटीज से सुरक्षित।
क्योंकि ये पूरी तरह से रिलायबल है और इस पर भरोसा किया जा सकता है, इसलिए कोलगेट।
मां का भरोसा और डेंटिस्ट का सुझाया कोलगेट।
Okay, was it clear to all of you? You could see the ad? Okay, great. Fine. See, disclaimer at the very outset, nothing critical. I'm not being critical about any ad or any product. It's just that we are using them as an instance to understand cultural studies as methods. So this is one ad by Colgate. We'll see another ad by Colgate again.
होती है कि अपने बच्चों के
लिए फैसला करे कि उसकी
जिम्मेदारी होती है
माँ की जिम्मेदारी होती है कि अपने बच्चों के लिए फैसला करे कि उसके लिए क्या अच्छा है और क्या गलत है। ये मेरा फैसला नहीं
दांतों की हिफाजत के लिए सिर्फ और
ये सिर्फ और सिर्फ कोलगेट पे भरोसा।
कोई और
कोई और टूथपेस्ट यूज करूं सवाल ही पैदा नहीं हो सकता। बच्चे कुछ भी खाते रहे
कोलगेट है तो
कोलगेट है तो मैं टेंशन नहीं।
इनकी तरह करोड़ों माएं भरोसा करती हैं कोलगेट पर। इसका प्लस कैल्शियम दांतों को रखे मजबूत और कैविटीज से महफूज।
कोलगेट पर 100% भरोसा।
मां का भरोसा डेंटिस्ट का तजवीज करता कोलगेट।
Okay, two ads you've watched about Colgate, right? Just tell me as a viewer, when you see such ads on television, how do they strike you? What are they trying to do? Yeah, I can hear. I can listen to you. Please speak.
Yes, Nara, what happened?
No, I'm just asking. Did you see the two ads which I showed just now?
Yeah, they saw. ಮಾತಾಡ್ರಿ.
So I'm okay. So I'm just waiting for your response. How do you see?
Speak. What you have noticed in those two ads?
Somebody has raised the hand. Yes, sir. Please, you can also share about it with us. Kiran, sir. First, Kiran sir has, I think he has raised his hand. Does he want to say something, or he wants to share?
Yeah, he has raised his hand, but I don't think that he's aware of it.
Okay, okay, okay. No problem. Okay, students, I would want to listen from you. Do you want to say something about these two ads? See, it's so simple. Okay, do you understand Hindi? Huh? Okay, so see, it's very simple, right? You might have come across these ads several times. What is the central figure in these ads? Tell me. Who is the central figure here?
Colgate and mother. Colgate and mother.
Mother, Colgate and mother, yes. So, see, look at the mother. Mother figure is something that becomes central in this and many such ads. Think about Bonvita, think about Dettol, think about Colgate, think about any such things, which has something to do with, a product is primarily meant for but kids can't use the intelligibility of their own to understand that Bonvita is good for me or Colgate is good for me. So who is supposed to decide for them? Mother is supposed to decide for them. Okay, and it's not only that the mother is supposed to decide for them. See, if you are a good mother, the implied message in these ads is that if you are a good mother, then you will use Colgate for your child. माँ का भरोसा Colgate का blah 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 something is there, right? So see, first of all, see what's happening in these ads. The mother and child relationship is being used here. How? The commodity, Colgate as a commodity is primarily materializing the relationship of people here, right? It's not Colgate. Yeah, obviously it's Colgate that is being advertised. That they are asking that use us. We are much better in the market than other things that are there in the market. So in terms of product, they want to attract your attention. But how are they doing it? They are using first of all mother figure. So a social framework is very much there in picture when viewers view such ads. So forget about mother. If there is somebody is already a mother who is watching this ad, then invariably that mother would be led to think that am I really a good mother? And how will she be able to find the answer to this question? She will try to ask herself, am I using Colgate for my child? Do I find Colgate as the best thing for my child? If I am able to use Colgate for my child, then I am a good mother. So Colgate tells you that okay, if it's between the mother and child relationship, then it's mother. First of all, mother has the whole responsibility for child. Father is nothing doing with this thing. That's what ad wants to tell us. I am not saying this. These ads will never use father figure. For Bonvita, mother is going to run with the child. Father is not running with the child. Do you remember this ad? Right. So what is happening in these ads? These ads, also in Dettol, for example, it's a mother who is a doctor, and she would say that okay, for my child, I find this product being the best thing to be used. So she will use it. So what's happening by these ads? How do we understand them in the framework of cultural studies? These ads are trying to tell you that okay, we need to exploit relationships of people, and by doing so we are primarily projecting the idea of a product being the best thing in the market. So Colgate is best because mothers trust Colgate, and there are no other relations or other people who can think best of the child but mother. And if mother says that Colgate is best, then there is no question of any other product being used for the child. If you are a good mother, do you get these points? Okay, just a moment. Please just excuse me for. Okay, thank you. Yeah, so these ads are trying to tell us certain things. How culture is becoming available in terms of devices. So keep first thing in mind. I was talking about the transition, right? Transition between the word culture to cultural. When you start observing practices around you who are doing cultural studies, you're not studying culture, because cultural is to look at the everyday practices, life practices, how people practice certain things. See, how do I practice the idea of morality? How do I practice the idea of what is ethical? Right? Being a mother, what is more good for me? What is ideal for me? What is ethical for me? To be good to my child, right? And how can I be good to my child? If I use so and so, so and so, so and so things, then I'll be good to my child. Now, this is a matter of practice. Are you getting this point? Yeah? Okay. Let's do more ad, two more ads rather, which will be more interesting for you. Okay, yes.
जॉनी बॉय राइड पे चले चल 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 थोड़ा बाइक पे करे चल नो बॉस थैंक यू
Maybe I'm riding. I'll call you back.
राइड के बीच में चिट चैट जूल जॉनी सोनो कूल
I mailed it in the morning, sir. Thank God. Right, my boss का phone था.
Johnny क्यों लेता है? When you're on the road, go for only Samsung Galaxy J, best bike. कॉल सुनी करके तुम चला रहे हो बाइक. You can call back if you like.
और अगर कॉल इम्पोर्टेंट हुआ
तो कॉलर
कॉलर बंद दबाएगा,
तेरा फोन बंद जाएगा तो बाइक
साइड पे लगाएगा,
बात कर पाएगा
Samsung Galaxy J3 is the best bike.
राइट
Okay. We will see what more.
एक मिनट में तेरा फोन कर देंगे ये कह रहा था.
ओके
अंकल आपके सारे ऐप खोल दिए. मैसेज खोल दिए. गैलरी खोल दी. एक सेकंड के लिए.
हाँ बिल्कुल
क्या लग रहा है यार भाई और इसको काम पर सबको व्हाट्सएप कर देना. ये वीडियो तुमने मेल कर देना. भाई
पूरी मूवी भेजता हूँ
किसको?
सबको
हो गया.
नया गैलेक्सी J2 टर्बो स्पीड टेक्नोलॉजी के साथ जो रैम को रखे फ्री ताकि ऐप्स खुले अप टू 40% फास्टर.
Okay, so these two ads were fine, right? You could see them. Yes? Right. So what did you think? What did you think in these two ads? It's about mobile phone. It's Shahid Kapoor. What else? It's about using a smartphone, isn't it? If you are a smart person, you will use. Yes or no? Yeah? These ads are trying to tell you that certain kind of subjectivity is at work. What kind of people are we who are becoming subject to this kind of frameworks. See, films, media, and there are many other things. Cultural studies as a discipline, as a field, is very vast. It envelops everything. Prior to cultural studies, we were like trapped into a particular kind of framework. We will look at that framework once in a while. But what I'm trying to say is that media studies, film studies, race, gender, ideology, politics, literature, theory, everything is part of cultural studies. Basically, cultural studies what it tries to do. This is what I've kept observing. It tries to look at the power dynamics, how they at work in society. Right. So see, cultural studies tries to look at who is this person to whom such ads are being targeted. How who is supposed to see these ads? Am I the viewer of this ad? When we go to see a film, look at this whole incident. We buy a ticket, we go and see the film. So we pay money for being amused or for receiving some kind of amusement or receiving some kind of pleasure. Or if I use the word entertainment, we want to be entertained, so we go and pay the fees and we go and get entertained because we believe that these films are there to entertain us. But do films really entertain us? Okay, if I reframe my question, do is it really the case that using mobile phones or smartphones really makes you become more smarter than what you are? Not at all. But it wants to create that illusion before you that if you use smartphone you will become smart. So indirectly they are trying to tell us we are not smart enough. It's only by holding a smartphone in my hand I'll be able to tell people that I am a smart person. Right. So it's using a particular kind of phone is something that is going to tell more about me than what I tell about myself. Now what am I doing? I am trying to adjust, appropriate certain kind of subjectivity which becomes available in market. Right, there is a kind of power dynamics which is at work. Okay, how is this power dynamics working? Very simple example. Move to the next slide, Fayaz.
Yeah.
This is number 5.
Yeah.
Okay. See, this slide says what idea of man or a woman seems to be evoked in these commercial ads. It's you and me, right? We are the people to whom these ads are being targeted, and we are the target of these ads, right? So they are trying to tell us, they are trying to project certain idea of man. So when we see these ads, we are trying to understand. These ads are trying to tell us that certain idea of man is ideal to be performed in society. Certain idea of a woman is ideal to be performed in society, isn't it? So let us move further. We go to the next slide. Hmm. So what do we get is this thing. The question is, do these choices, like am I using a Colgate? Am I using Bonbit? Am I using a smartphone? Which smartphone I'm using? Is it Samsung or it's iPhone or it's any other thing, right? So what am I using? And do my choices make me feel more powerful, confident, ethical in my choices, moral behavior, moral conduct, rational of my thinking? Do all these things really make me feel that I'm a free individual? Now, what would you say? Because usually we think that we have a choice, right? suppose I want to buy a mobile phone, okay, and we go to the market with an idea that okay, I have certain kind of budget. Within this budget, what all models are there, I'll try to choose something from them, right? Now this is where I realize that I'm free. I think myself as free individual to make my choices. Okay. uh, let's do this small exercise, the moment of recognition. I think it's slightly not in this slide but next slide. What I want you to do is, I guess you all have a mobile phone. Hmm? Can I see your mobile phone? Just show me your mobile phone, all of you together. Okay. Yes. Fine.
I have
Now,
two.
please show us too. Right? So see, the response that we get from a field like cultural studies would be that yes, these things when we make choices. See, I have two means I'm so like happy that I have two mobile phones. Right? Look at your teacher's, voice modulation when he shared the information that I have two. What does it say? What does it indicate? It says that yes, it's impossible to think about our lives without mobile phone today. It's very significant to use mobile phone. So even if you are not there, it's okay, but your mobile phone has to be there. It marks your presence in a very prominent way. More than your body, it's your mobile phone that marks your presence as an individual, as a person. Now, thinking like this really makes us understand that yes, maybe I become more powerful. I feel more confident. I feel like an individual that I'm making my own choices. Now, this is something that's a myth, and cultural studies tries to uncover this myth. It says that we think that we have choices, but that's not the case. Because first of all, if you see all our mobile phones, they are more or less same, isn't it? The company might be different. Fayaz, sorry, please excuse me for a second.
ಕಂಪ್ಯೂಟರ್ ಏನಾಗೈತೆ ಯಾರಿಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತು ಇವತ್ತು ಸುಸ್ತಾಗಿ ಇವತ್ತಿನ ಟೈಮರ್ ಖರಾಬ್ ಐತಿ.
Yes, sorry for the disturbance and interruption. Okay, so I was saying something. Where was I? What we were discussing?
Power dynamics.
Power dynamics, yes. So yeah, mobile phones, right? We all use mobile phones. We all think that we are free individuals and we make our own choices. So the point that I was saying was that okay, if we look at our mobile phones, right? How many of your mobile phones have camera? Just raise your hand. Okay. Okay, it might have, camera both sides. Yes or no? Yeah. Okay, we'll be able to use most of the Android apps that are there in the market available. Yes or no? Yeah. Okay. Then what else can you do through your mobile phone? You need a camera, you need good music, and then you need to use different apps which facilitate your day to day life practices. More or less, no matter which company, right? There are different kinds of companies available in the market, but all of them are trying to give you the same thing. Some will say that we use better materials, so they make their product very expensive. Some others say that we can't afford this kind of thing, so we go for cheaper materials, so it's cheap. But otherwise, as far as operational and functional aspect of a mobile phone is concerned, all our mobile phones are doing the same things, isn't it? In spite of this, see, now this is the jerk that cultural studies gives you. In spite of this, that we all are using the same product, more or less in the same way. Most of the time, a phone which has a good camera is mostly used for selfie. So social media becomes accessible, available, and again, it empowers me. The more I use it, the more it empowers me. Now, all these things become possible by using mobile phone, right? Whether it's a phone of 5,000 or 50,000 or 5 lakh, but more or less, these are the things that a mobile phone does. Now, we all have a mobile phone according to our capacity, but still, this makes me feel that I'm different from others. How and why? Suppose there is somebody in your class who intends to buy a new phone. You were using it for 2 years and now you're bored of it. You want to buy a new thing that's available in the market. You go, you buy according to your budget, you come and share it with your friends that you have bought a new phone. What are you doing? That very day and for coming few days, you feel that happiness within, that okay, I have bought a new phone, I have bought a new phone, it's a matter of pride for me that I'm able to use so and so phone and all that. For a time being, this very act of buying a new phone makes you believe that you are distinct and different from others. Yes or no? Yeah. See, same is applicable for any other kind of product that we use in the market. We use maybe a water bottle. Most of you will be carrying a water bottle with you of a different shape, different size, different color, different company. But more or less, water bottle has the same function that you can drink water whenever you want to have it. Right. So now what's happening here? Mobile phone, Bonvita, Colgate, water bottle, these are all products that are there in the market. We go to buy them. This moment makes us feel empowered for a moment. And that is very illusionary experience. Because this very industry, this very capitalist culture is going to rob us of this very experience that I'm empowered. And how does it do it? On one hand, these products make you feel for a time being that you're distinct and different from others. Just before a while, we all looked at our mobile phones. Most of them look similar, most of them have same functions. We all use mobile phones mostly for similar things. When you enter any kind of space, be it a professional academic space or non-academic space, be it a family house setup, you enter any space where people are not talking to each other, most of them they are using mobile phones. What does it indicate? That we all have, like, we have glued ourselves to this instrument. What does it indicate? That we are becoming sane. So apparently the idea that I am different or distinct from others, I am a free individual to make my choices, this very idea becomes available to us as an illusion. It's not empowering experience. It's very temporary and momentary experience. Now this is what cultural studies can let you understand. This consciousness becomes available if you use cultural studies as a method. Now we'll go slightly more into method aspect and theoretical framework. Fayaz, can we please move to the next slide?
Yeah. A moment of
Yeah.
recognition.
Yeah, moment of recognition was where I wanted you to show your mobile phone so that we understand how we all are becoming the same subjects. The idea of formula, the sameness is very much there at the center. Okay, we move to the next slide, please. Yes. See now, cultural studies will make you understand that culture now impresses the same stamp on everything. Right? Culture impresses the same stamp on everything. Now, see, in cultural studies, there are different tenets of thinkers. Particular mode of thinking in terms of method and writers that we are discussing today, it's Max Ockheimer and Theodor Adorno. And in specific, I'm referring to one of the essays by them that is known as The Culture Industry, Enlightenment as Mass Deception. So, what all we have seen so far, by discussing ads about different products that we saw so far, they are all trying to make us understand that there is industry which is at work. The idea of labor is there very much at work, and this industry is there to make us understand that it is facilitating our day-to-day life, our routine, our day-to-day life. Right? It's there to facilitate us. It's there to help us out to make things smooth and easier for us. So by doing so, imagine a moment before 15 years. Was it really a case that everybody will have a mobile phone with them? No. Only limited people used to have it, and they would also again have limited use of that product. So what happened in the span of these 15 years that now we have this product in the hands of everybody? Everybody has a mobile phone. Yes or no? Everyone has a mobile phone. That means market was able to create or manufacture a need which will tell everybody that you are supposed to have a mobile phone. We can't think of somebody who doesn't use mobile phone. It's very rare to find such people. I'm talking about in general scenario. Like if we go to remote areas, there maybe we might find people that may not be using mobile phone, but invariably, as far as industry is concerned, as far as the understanding of labor in our society in which we are living is concerned, industry sees to it that it will invariably produce one or the other thing, which has to be used by people. Right? So in that sense it's written here, in that sense that we are trying to understand Adorno and Horkheimer's position. What are they trying to say? What do they mean when they talk about culture industry? What do they mean by enlightenment? What do they mean by mass deception? Mass deception, in one sense, I've already indicated. If we all believe that by using a distinct mobile phone or maybe distinct water bottle or maybe different varieties of clothes, we all are trying to prove our individualities and we being distinct and unique and different from others, then that's not the case, because culture industry does not let you be different from others, because it is targeting all of them in the same way, where everybody is just led to think that I'm individual and I'm different. Now imagine where everybody, if there are 20 students or if there are 20 people in one room, if everybody is distinct and unique, is it that everybody is really unique? Out of 20, one person can be unique. Out of 20, maybe 5 people can be unique. Out of 20, all the 20 cannot be unique. Yes or no? Yeah. So, but this doesn't become available to us when we participate in market practices. When we go to buy something, every time when you become a buyer, the market does wants to feel that okay, you're distinct and you're different, and it befools everybody to believe in this thing, and by doing so it flourishes, right? So yeah, culture now impresses the same stamp on everything. It seems to claim that standards were based on the first place on consumers' needs. So how does a market talk to us? Market tells us that okay, before 15 years there was no need for mobile phone. Gradually, people realize that this is something that is very important. This is very helpful. So gradually, it became a need, and because more number of people are using it, more number of companies are producing more number of products in the market. Yes or no? So apparently, it seems to say that okay, because people need it, so we are producing it. Whereas the actuality or the reality is the other way around. Because they are producing it, we are using it. Right? Okay. Next, it says something is provided for everybody, for all, so that none may escape. See, culture industry. Suppose uh, people might, in one classroom, different types of people are there, and all of you might like different kinds of films. Okay, somebody likes action films, some like comedy, some like romances, some like historical films. You might have different taste. That's a different thing. But will there be anybody who will say that okay, I don't like films at all? I don't go to see the films at all. Does culture industry leave this option with anybody to not to choose anything? No, we don't have a choice not to choose anything, right? Okay, you don't like action films, you go and we have other things to offer you. So film industry is also a kind of culture industry. It is there to offer you certain things. You don't like this hero, we have another hero. You don't like this actress, we have another actor. You don't like acting, we have something else to offer you. Cinematography is there, this is there, that is there. We have so many things to offer you. All that culture industry needs is consumers. You and me, we are consumers of this industry, right? We are the consumers of this industry, and how do we consume it? Because we are made to believe that it is necessary for us to consume it. And how this necessity is created is what you can study through cultural studies. So sameness is the mark of culture industry. If we move to the next slide, it says now what culture industry has done, it creates formulas. See, you and we don't have choice to schematize, our mobile phone. We can't customize it. Can we customize our phones that we are using? No. It see, the menu is already prepared. If you suppose you go to a hotel to eat, right? You go to a restaurant to eat. So what does a restaurant do? It gives you a menu card. You select from that menu card, isn't it? Now there might be 50 or 100 types of different dishes available to be consumed by you. But it doesn't give you any option. It doesn't give you any option not to choose from the available dishes. If you say that okay, I want this thing from first, this from the fifth, and this from the 10th, customize the dish for me. Will they do it for you? Most of the restaurants will not do it. They will not customize dish for you. They have ready-made dishes available for you, and you have to consume from that only. So what do you think? Out of 100, at least you have choice to choose one. So you think that you are the chooser. You choose to do something. You choose to eat something. But we don't think that I don't have a choice beyond this 100 things. I don't have a choice to customize. So is mobile phone. So is every other product that we are using as consumers. So this schematization is already being done on behalf of us by the power factors which are there in the market. They think on behalf of us. We are not supposed to think, right? We are not supposed to think. They think on behalf of us, and then they let us know, okay, you take this, this is good, this is bad. This is going to serve your needs, this is going to serve your wants. They let us know. We have no choice. We have no subject position to choose something. Indirectly, if I say, we don't have agency to, exercise in such matters, right? So this is creation of formula. Industry creates formulas. It already designs everything for us to be consumed. Then we move to the next one. So, see, there was a moment in the history of European thoughts. If you look at right from Plato, I'm not going to give you the whole history of this movement, but in brief, if we try to see what was the scenario before the culture industry, what was the scenario before this kind of practices. Literature is part of cultural studies. So, what was literature before it became part of cultural studies? So you can see here work in the center. Hope you are moving with me in terms of slides. This is slide number 11. We see here work in the center, and there are two things. And this chart, this diagram is given by M.H. Grams. You can read his work and you'll see what he's trying to explain. He says, in earlier times, literature, a work of art, the idea of literary was more concerned with representation. Is a work of art really able to represent the reality, the external world around it? That is universe. So, does a work of art have the capacity and capability to relate with the outer world? So, from classical criticism onwards, you see this concern has always been there, right? That whether the work of art can represent reality or not. Okay, another way to look at work of art would be to focus on the artist. We are not concerned anymore about whether the work of art is representing any reality or not, whether it is mimesis or not, whether it's truthful reflection of reality or not. We are not concerned with truth and false here, but we are concerned with artist. We are trying to understand what's there in the artist which is making him express himself in this way. And the idea of individualism, the idea of freedom, the expressionism and all these movements which started in the 19th century, from say romanticism onwards to expressionism, this entire period is about putting the author, artist in the center, right? Which emphasizes not on the fact that whether the work of art is really able to reproduce the photographic reality or not. We are not concerned with that. They'll say, okay, which stroke is something which is significant to understand the writer, the artist. What is he doing? If somebody is, for example, see, you look at this painting, Sunflower, right? uh, by Vincent van Gogh, right? Van Gogh's painting. So sunflower as a flower is not distinct thing. Everybody knows that. Many painters might have painted this painting. Or maybe Starry Night. Starry Night is not something unusual. Everybody knows what is Starry Night. Then what is peculiar about this painter who makes Starry Night available to us in a particular way? Okay, shall we
Yeah,
continue?
continue. Yeah. There is a power failure. So
Yeah, I could understand it. Yeah. Okay. So, what is peculiar about Starry Night or maybe Sunflower or maybe Mona Lisa? What are we trying to see here? We are trying to see the artist. What is peculiar about his experience of certain things and how does he express it? Then, work of art is understood in relation to the artist. That is second thing. And third is later on. Work of art is related to audience in terms of reader response theory. That is a later development. But if you go way back to Plato, then how the work of art is going to affect the audience, whether it is really going to like purgation of emotions, is it really going to be didactic, is it really helping people to become better? So work of art has been caught in this dynamics. representation, artist, and audience. Now, this moment is elaborated and is you will find extended theoretical and literary frameworks to understand work of art right from Plato's time till 19th century. With enlightenment makes us believe that we are rational people, we are thinkers, right? And enlightenment made us believe that I'm an individual and I exercise my agency. I choose, and I'm a rational creature. I'm an educated person. I have my choices. Now, this very thought is used by culture industry in a way that hardly leaves any room for any individual to remain a free individual. And that is where culture industry actually deceives you. And this deception happens not at individual level. This deception happens at mass, right? And that's what the central idea of the essay is. Okay, we move to the next slide, which is, as I explained, this idea was there right from Romanticism to Expressionism, which says, okay, if you put artist at the center, then you will protest against any given formula. Okay, you will protest against any given schematization. You don't accept it because you think that you are free to think about it. So that was there until then, but after this, the loss of formalism has happened, right, with culture industry in 20th century moment. Remember the first ad that we saw, image is everything, right? Because we are led to think about certain things in a specific way, and that has initiated us into the 20th century dense moment of theoretical framework, which really assigns a kind of subject position to us. And the ability to understand that subject position becomes available to us as methods only when you do cultural studies. So the loss of formalism is there in the culture industry, and then we move to the next slide. Now, see, the cultural studies will tell you that in culture industry, the ruler no longer says you must think as I do or die. Just before a while, I told you that we don't have choice to think. They think on behalf of us. But how do they think on behalf of us? They don't tell us. They don't threaten us. They don't say that, okay, you must think as I do or die. No, that's not the threat. Rather, the ruler in culture industry, who is the ruler? Who manufactures our needs, the one who controls the market. That person is the ruler. So what does the ruler do? He says, you are free not to think as I do. Okay. You don't want to buy mobile phone, don't buy it. You don't want to buy water bottle, don't do it. You don't want to buy available ready-made food that's there in the market, don't do it. You don't want to watch the film, don't do it. We are free not to do anything. We are free not to choose anything. But then what? Your property, everything shall remain yours. But from this day on, you are a stranger among us. Suppose somebody decides from today in your class not to use mobile phone tomorrow. How will you look at that person? He becomes a stranger, isn't it? He or she becomes a stranger. How come that you decide that you will not use a mobile phone? In that sense, if even in a what do we say, in a streak of a moment, if you have been able to think that, okay, that person will become a stranger for you, then this is nobody but you and me. The ruler is not outsiders. Yes, there are people there in the market who decide things on behalf of us, but they have imparted this thinking they have induced this thinking in our minds also, that we also start thinking along the same lines, right? We don't come across people who will say, I don't go and see the film, I don't go out and I don't eat in the restaurants. No, it's very common practice, because if somebody does that, that person is a stranger for us. That's what cultural studies, culture industry as an industry does to us. So deceived masses are captivated by the myth of success. So the more you use the mobile phone, the better phone you use, the more successful you are. The more you have had eaten outside in number of restaurants, the more successful person you are. The more you are able to articulate your elitism by using very expensive things, the more successful you are. Yes or no? This is what culture industry trains you to believe in, right? So, and it's not done at individual level, it is done at the mass level. So mass is deceived and captivated by the myth of success. The result is constant reproduction for the same thing. So culture industry is constantly producing same things are constantly being repeated in the market, and those who use the same thing, they end up becoming same towards the end. So far so clear? Are we okay still so far? Great, thank you. Few more slides and then I'm done, I think. We move to the next slide. Now if this is how culture industry, okay, next, not this one, this we are done. Faiz, next after this, number 14. Yes. If this is how culture industry is behaving, then this could be seen as totality of culture industry. Totalitarian attitude of culture industry that becomes available by using enlightenment as a philosophy. Enlightenment provides a kind of trajectory to culture industry to develop a kind of framework where everything is constantly being repeated and it becomes totalitarian in nature. So the power of culture industry resides in its identification with a manufactured need. But you and me, we need to go out and eat. When we are celebrating, we can't make something at home and celebrate. No, we have to go out and eat, right? When we want a break from exams, when it's our last exam, we want to go and see the film. When there is a birthday, we want to take the cut the cake. That's a way to celebrate, isn't it? We want to go to MACD. We want to go to like so many places, right? Now that's how the needs are being manufactured. That if you are to celebrate, these are the ways to celebrate, right? Sitting at home is a way to celebrate. So this is a manufactured need. Culture industry manufactures our needs, right? And that's where cultural studies comes in place. It tells you how these needs are being manufactured, and it is done, from person to person. Every individual sees to it that the other person is just like me, right? Now at this moment, we can very well bring in Foucault, but we'll not get into Foucault right now. We move to the next. The culture industry perpetually. Now if this is what culture industry does, you will say that is it not a cheating then? On one hand it tells us that the enlightenment philosophy on one hand wants to believe that okay, everybody is individual, everybody is free, everybody is a rational thinker, and on the other hand it practices certain things which really makes us all become sane. Is it not a cheating? It is a cheating. And that's why Hockermere and Adorno, they are saying it's deception, mass deception. But one more way to understand this deception is in a very methodical way. This is explained in the essay. Culture industry perpetually cheats its consumers of what it perpetually promises. For example, amusement. Okay. Now, amusement in its very simple sense, in a very loose sense, could be understood as, you see something and you feel amused. Something like this. Uh, yes. Okay. Interesting, right? Okay, you saw three instances here, right? Which instances you like more than the other? Did you like all three of them? Just raise your hand if you liked all three of them. किसमें ज़्यादा मज़ा आया? Like, which one really made you laugh at it? First, second, third, third one? Okay. First one. The first one we see that, okay, Charlie Chaplin falls on banana peel, right? Second time, second instance, somebody tried to do it, but nothing really worked. The person walked, but then he really did not sleep, right? And in the third instance, yes, it again happened that somebody slipped over that banana peel. So what's happening here? Why do we laugh at such instances? When somebody falls, we laugh at him, right, or her. Why do we do it? Our immediate reaction is laughter, invariably. Then, we might suddenly become very conscious. Oh my goodness, I should not laugh. I should help the person, right? And if he or she happens to be a friend, then you become more conscious that no, 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 I should not laugh at the person. I should help him out or I should help her out. Yes or no? But immediate response is laughter. Now, what is this laughter? Let's try to see it in a very slow motion. Laughter gets generated when there is nothing to laugh at. Right? Now, why am I saying this that there is nothing to laugh at? See, Charlie Chaplin threw that, banana peel there and he, slipped, right? Now, when he fell, the reaction on his face would be that, okay, my goodness, something really happened with me. It was a dangerous thing for me. It was a dangerous thing to happen to me. That might be the expression on his face. And when we are looking, when we are the audience to look at him, then what are we laughing at? Oh my goodness, there was no danger at all. It was not dangerous thing to happen to you. But you thought it to be so is a wrong thing. There is no menace, there is no threat, there is no danger. So we are laughing at somebody else's misunderstanding. We are laughing at the lack that the person could not understand. Lack of danger. There is no danger. The person who becomes subject to this experience might think that, okay, there was some danger. But then he could escape the danger. The danger which is there in terms of experience with the person is not there with the audience. Do you get this point? So we laugh at something when nothing is there to laugh at. For a friction of a moment, he thought that, okay, danger is there, but then see, the danger is not there. Oh, it was so okay. It was all fine. Rather, you feel happy about it. You're amused. You're pleased. This is the amusement that culture industry offers you. Just like this instance, when we laugh, when there is nothing to laugh at, is something what culture industry does to us. How? Culture industry offers a kind of amusement, but this amusement is nothing in terms of really amusement. This amusement is rather an extension of work. I just before a while told you that, okay, after the exams we want to go and see the film because we believe that watching a film is going to give me a different experience from writing the exams. We are made to believe, or we are trained to think that writing exams is a stressful act, while watching the film is not stressful act. To release that tension, to release that stress, we go and see the film. So we are made to believe that, okay, films are going to amuse you. They provide you, they try to provide you amusement, they try to please you. But if you now analyze the larger framework by taking the instance from laughter, that laughter offers you laughter when there is nothing actually to laugh at. In a similar sense, films provide you amusement when there is no amusement at all. Right? So amusement, watching films becomes an extension of work. For example, now this is peculiar to the Charlie Chaplin films in the 20th century. What do you see in these films? Charlie Chaplin is working in some factory and he's behaving like machine, and that is what makes you laugh at him. When we are working in office, we are also behaving like machines, isn't it? And I want to free myself from this mechanical work, and I go and see Charlie Chaplin film, and I feel that okay, I laugh at him. So while laughing at Charlie Chaplin, I'm laughing at my own self because I was before a moment, before an hour or so, I was also that person working in a factory or working in a particular place, behaving in a very mechanical way. So watching Charlie Chaplin working in a factory, laughing at him is nothing but an extension of the same prolongation of that work, that tension, that stress. So apparently, just like buying a phone apparently makes you feel more powerful, similarly, when you go and see the film, films apparently wants to tell you or wants you to believe that you will get some amusement, but that's not the case. So in that sense, culture industry perpetually promises something to offer to its audience, but it never does so. By doing so, it cheats its consumers. That's the central argument of the essay. So I would request you to read the essay to get more insights into this whole argument. So finally, we go to the next slide, which says there is laughter because there is nothing to laugh at. Amusement. What is amusement? Amusement goods manufactured as after image of the work process, prolongation of work, and that is what is late capitalism. Late capitalism, this is what it does to you. It provides certain kinds of goods to you which you apparently think that they are going to help you, they are going to amuse you, but they don't amuse you because they are just catering to the manufactured needs that are created by the market. So if I feel that okay, watching a film is going to amuse me, this is the need that is manufactured by the market because hundreds of films are being made. What if we don't go and watch them? How will they make business? Are you getting the point? Fine. So finally, the culture industry does not address the question of alienation, rather it erases the one. Now, this is something that very closely coincides with the dense moment of 20th century modernism. Remember T.S. Eliot's Westland, post-war period. It's modern times, but it's completely like alienation is at work. Man is not able to relate with his world. Man is not able to relate with his own self. Man is not able to relate with anything, right? So that alienation is something that is very much available in cultural studies, in culture industry. That my stress that I had while working at some particular factory or maybe any setup, when I'm working there, I want to release that stress, so I want to go out and do something which will help me. So I want myself to be amused, but instead of providing me amusement, it subjects me to the same situation, right? So in doing so, culture industry is not addressing the question of alienation, rather it erases the one. So what is it trying to tell you? Not only culture industry thinks on behalf of you, but it simply tells you, it makes you believe, it convinces you there is no need to think at all. Not only it does not let you think, but it makes you believe that there is no need to think at all. This question of alienation is completely erased. So erasure of this moment of erasure is where the idea of deception is being read by O'Connell and Adorno. And culture industry does it very well. It masks the whole process in a beautiful way so that we don't realize it. This masking happens through enlightenment, and that's why they call enlightenment a totalitarian thing. Totalitarian thing, you all understand that it's problematic, right? And this is how they are offering critique of modernity. So the last slide, which says cultural studies examines its subject matter in terms of cultural practices. Now, this is the larger framework within which the discipline functions. It tries to look at the cultural practices and their relation to power. We saw right from the first ad, cameras ad, Colgate ad, that Samsung mobile phone ad, right? It talks about power relations, right? their relations to power. Its goal is to expose power relationships and examine how these relationships influence and shape cultural practices. And how these practices, they are further shaping these cultural practices. So, what kind of power dynamics is at work in making us act in a particular way in our day to day life practices? How is our everyday manufacture is something that you can understand if you use cultural studies as methods to understand your day to day life, everyday life. I think I'll end with this thing and thank you. Um, you're most welcome for your questions, your queries, your comments, anything that you want to understand.
Yes, if you have any questions, you please so open for questions. Anyone of you?
Sir, are the power dynamics are only the reason of adapting the culture?
Come.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Very good afternoon.
Are the power dynamics and factors are the only reason of adapting the culture?
Only reason for
Adopting or shaping the culture?
no, there are many other factors. They use cultural practices as a site through which the power dynamics becomes functional. Because see, if we are not there, then how will this power dynamics become functional? Not really, right? Apart from that, uh, products which are there in the market. So in that sense, literature is also one of the products.
That is why I am asking.
Exactly, yeah. So
You
literature is
didn't
also one of.
mention that.
I didn't mention that. Okay, yeah, because I told you that literature is something that functions in the larger frameworks. As I told, I think I did touch upon this area right in the beginning that uh, different kinds of studies are part of cultural studies. So literature also is seen in terms of power. Yeah, so I agree with you. Literature is very much part of this power dynamic.
Yeah, just a minute. Now?
Yeah, this is
Yeah.
Correct. Because two screens are working simultaneously, there is problem. Switch off one of the screens. Yeah, I think this is okay. Okay, did I answer your question?
Yeah, now are you audible?
Yeah.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, you can also keep one more thing in mind. Literature, when we look at literature in terms of power dynamics, don't mistake it only to look at it in Marxist framework, because there is distinction between these frameworks. Like Marxist framework to a great extent is being used by these writers who practitioners of cultural studies, but then they deviate also from that. So because then Marxist framework will look at literature in terms of just labor, and it evades, or it does away with many other factors just to reduce everything to power dynamics. Now that's not how literary of literature remains functional and available in theoretical frameworks. So yes, to some extent, literature is part of this power dynamics, but it's not all that is there to literature. That's one thing that we need to keep in mind. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, are there any few more questions? Okay, Dhara, a big thank you for sparing your valuable time and sharing your ideas and thoughts regarding cultural studies. And it was a brainstorming session. And thank you for your scholarly lecture on behalf of my director, chairman, and then my research scholars and my students. A big thank you to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Fayaz, and thank you to all of you for listening to me.
Take care. Hmm? Yeah.
Okay.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye. Bye. Bye.